Good evening. The time is 7 o'clock on Tuesday, September 19th, 2017. I'd like to call the Board of Selectmen meeting for this evening to order. As always, we begin with the Pledge of Allegiance, so please rise and join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. All right, first up, we have public forum, limited to 5 minutes per topic. Discussion or comments about town employees or agency members shall be avoided so as not to violate individuals' rights. Is there anyone here this evening for public forum? All right, seeing none, why don't we move on to the minutes from our September 5th meeting?
Mr. Chairman, I move to accept the Board of Selectmen minutes from September 5th, 2017 as presented.
Second.
Hearing a motion and a second, are there any comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Passes 3-0. All right, our first agenda item this evening is a public hearing regarding the installation of a pole. Jim?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Does the board open the public hearing first before we comment?
Reading that.
Yeah, I think so.
All right.
All right, so what we need to do is we have to do a roll call vote?
I think so, right?
So the public hearing is open. You just declare it open.
All right,
Okay.
so then why don't I declare the, there's nothing specific about it.
Yep.
All right, tonight's public hearing open.
Dave, do you want to read the notice?
Yeah, I'll read the notice into the record. So as advertised in the August 31st, 2017 Millbury Sutton Chronicle, Town of Sutton Board of Selectmen public hearing notice, in accordance with the provisions of Mass General Law, Chapter 166, Section 22, you are hereby notified that a public hearing will be held at 7 o'clock p.m. Tuesday, September 19th, 2017, in the Sutton Town Hall upon petition from National Grid and Verizon for permission to install one SO pole on Blackstone Street at the intersection of Blackstone Street and Providence Road and continue approximately 20 feet in a southwest direction. National Grid to install a 35C3 stub pole to replace two anchors facing northeast against pole 25 on Blackstone Street. Also for permission to erect and maintain poles and wires together with such sustaining and protecting fixtures as it finds necessary. Said poles to be created in accordance with plan filed herewith marked NGrid number 20087188.
All right, thank you.
It was properly advertised. Public safety is okay with all of this, as well as the highway superintendent, so.
All right, excellent. Then why don't you come up, introduce yourself to the community, and why don't you explain to us what's this pole all about?
My name is Mel Harvey. I work for National Grid. I'm actually the designer that put this job together.
Sit so you can talk into the mic.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So basically, just to, I found there was just a little slight error in what we were, the wording of the hearing notice. It's one pole, and it's actually a push brace, not a stub pole. It just leans against another pole to just keep it in place, because what we're doing is we're trying to remove two anchors on the other side of the pole. So I think the town's putting a trail near this bridge that just got repaired over there near Providence and Blackstone.
That's correct.
And they want to remove the anchors, so we're putting the push brace in its place, and that's the only pole that's being installed.
Okay.
Does the plan reflect that?
Yeah, I actually have a copy of it, of the diagram, and the one that you had, I'm not sure if you have this one or not, this petition thing.
That's the one I think we have.
You have that. So that one just shows the push brace leaning against the pole, and that's pretty much all we have. And it's out of the way. It's there's a large building right near there. It's like a factory or something.
Yeah, JT Foods.
And we didn't want to try to get an easement on theirs to put some kind of stub pole there with an anchor that would pull it in that direction. So we tried to stay in the public way and just lean another pole that would hold it in place, so we'd have no issues.
Excellent.
Really, not much else we could have done. It's a tight quarters over there. Yeah.
All right, excellent. As we generally do, we open up for questions and comments from the members of the board. So, Dave, do you have any?
No, I don't have any particular questions about the project itself. I guess the only question I have is procedural, to make sure that the changes that, as this is written, are going to affect our ability to vote on this tonight. I mean, I think it sounds like the plan was written correctly.
Well, the poll hearing is
You mean with the posting of the public hearing?
Yeah, so the public hearing
Changing?
said one thing, but the plan itself, I think it sounds like is proper and correct, so.
On this, or are you just gonna go by the plan number?
Yeah, if we approve the motion, it follows the plan number.
Yeah, and the plan is filed correctly.
I think that is okay.
The
with
work
us.
request number, right, that you stated? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds right
Poll
to me.
poll hearing number 1669-7172.
Okay,
So
All right.
I think that's all set.
okay, then I'm fine, thank you.
Good.
Mike?
I don't have anything. It was open for the public hearing, and see, nobody had shown to have any concerns. I don't have any. It seems like it's a procedure and, just a change on the poll, but it sounds like everything's okay with changing it from the 2 anchors to the leaning. So, thank you.
Yeah, the only comment I had to make is when I originally saw this, I looked at it quickly and I thought it was going to be a new pole that was going in. But the fact that you're just simply altering the existing,
It is actually a new pole, but
Right,
it
but
lines against the existing pole, yes.
but the location itself, so it's not like.
It's in the same place. It's
Right,
pretty much in the
so
same place.
You're swapping one in, one out, you're bracing it, you're going to make it more easy for the public to get around if they're going down on the bike trail. So, yeah, I don't really see any issues with this as well. So that being the case, how about do we need to entertain a motion to close the public hearing first? All right, so I would entertain a motion
So
to close
moved.
the public hearing.
So moved.
Second, sorry.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So the motion to close the public hearing passes 3-0.
Thank you.
And I would entertain another motion, I suppose.
Mike, I'll take this one because
You got
the number changed.
Perfect. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve poll hearing number 200871188 from National Grid as advertised in the August 31st, 2017 Millbury Sutton Chronicle.
Second.
Hearing a motion second, any further comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Passes
I was just thinking,
Having a
because
moment?
of down in Florida, I'm like, wow, this work getting done with the whole crew being down in
And we
Florida.
got a lot of crews down there.
Yeah, will the timing still be fine? Everything here, you've got.
Oh, everything's good. Yeah,
all
we
right.
got plenty. I think we only sent one crew from each barn.
Oh, was it?
Yeah,
All
so
right.
we got plenty of
Okay.
trucks still.
Thank you. That's what I was thinking.
Well, thank you very much.
Oh, thank you.
Definitely
Thank you,
appreciate you coming
gentlemen.
before
One
us.
second, can you come over with a question?
A little delayed.
This is the.
I thought you were going to have something for a second.
I was thinking that.
Well, what we're going to do is I'm going to have Vinny Litigussi
Yep.
fix that tomorrow and resend you the cover page only.
That would be
It's just that
terrific.
one comment.
That'd be
It should
terrific.
just say push brakes instead of stop.
Great.
That's it. Everything else is the same.
All right, sounds good, thank you.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you.
All right, next up on the agenda is the draft fall town meeting warrant. Now, if I could, I'd like to remind everybody in the audience that this is not a public hearing, that this is merely a presentation of the draft to this board. If you have any questions about any particular items, I believe it's going before the FinCom next week.
It will be.
And I believe that will be a more public venue to ask questions at that time.
That's correct.
All right, thank you.
That is an official public hearing next Tuesday night. This is just the draft warrant. I will present the final warrant to the board at their next Selectmen's meeting on October 3rd for signing. But this is just to go over the draft and to see if there are any questions. Okay, Article number 1, we typically revote the budget at fall town meeting. That's exactly what this is. We budget the net of state aid. It came in $1,392 less than we budgeted. A lot of that's a result of the charges that we got assessed for the final cherry sheet. But we have a policy of giving I have a policy of giving the school department all of the Chapter 70 money that's been dedicated through this cherry sheet. That means that we need to raise and appropriate $15,612. We're going to do that through new growth. The new growth appropriation, we budgeted $150,000 at Maytown meeting. It has yet to be certified, but it's probably above $400,000 at this point. I'll talk about an additional article where we'll fund additional new growth, but this is where we're raising $15,612 to go to offset the deficit in the cherry sheet. And that'll allow us to give the full $14,220 to the school department in Chapter 78. That's a $10 increase from the House and Senate. The governor gave $20 per student. The House and Senate agreed on $30 per student in the final budget. So that's Article number 1. Article number 2, to vote to transfer from overlay surplus funds in the amount of $50,000 and to appropriate the same to the 2018 OPEB expense account. This is following the OPEB policy that the board adopted, I think, this last summer. As is policy, we have an overlay surplus. We're going to appropriate $50,000. The Board of Assessors is releasing those funds this evening, signing a letter, and this will be increase our OPEB trust fund by $50,000. Right now, the balance is roughly $900,000, give or take. So just a little bit more money in that fund. Article number 3, to see if the town will vote to amend the vote taken on an Article 7 of the May town meeting to reflect the final tax levy limit. This is how we're going to deal with new growth, this article in particular. Because, as I mentioned, new growth initially appropriated in May was $150,000. The final number that will be certified will be over $400,000, but less than $500,000. That leaves us $250,000 to appropriate. Our thought is what we want to do is appropriate the new growth to the capital plan, and decrease the free cash appropriation to fund the capital plan. So it's really a swap out of new growth versus free cash. The free cash number will go up by the amount of new growth we appropriate. So if we appropriate $200,000, the free cash number will go up by $200,000. So I think it's a positive. It allows us to increase the amount of free cash that we have, and also preserve new growth for a one-time expenditure that will make it available in FY19 for further appropriation. That's all I have to say about that. Article number 4 is bad bills or bills from prior fiscal years, commonly referred to as bad bills, but to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate transfer from available funds for paying prior year invoices. I believe we have 2. The first one is WB Mason. That's a supply issue that we just couldn't work with. We've been doing well working with WB Mason, but we weren't able to resolve this $107. Ultimately, we will have to appropriate it from the current supply budget to pay this bill. The bill came in obviously prior to July 1, 2017. The other bill is for Medicare processing in the amount of $2,557. We currently we budget, I think, $30,000 in Medicare billing, Medicare receipts. We obviously receive roughly $60,000 in addition to that, so for a total of $90,000. So this bill was sent over to us, I think, in the last day or two from the school department. I haven't spoken to Ted Friend, but I assume it was just an oversight. It was left on an employee's desk and was sent over to us too late. So now we need to go to town meeting to get it approved.
Okay.
Article number 5, to see if the town will accept the provisions of Mass General Law, Chapter 40, Section 8J, to establish a commission on disability. This is something that I brought to the board, I think, in August. We have had some interest from the community, people that are willing to serve on this. This is a necessary part that the town meeting adopts this provision, this law, and then we can go forward to establishing a formal commission on disability. Article number 6, to see if the town will accept the provisions of general law, Mass General Law, Chapter 39, Section 23D, relative to a board or committee member voting on issues when they have missed a single meeting, but have filed an affidavit of examination of evidence and viewing as to not be disqualified from voting on the matter. This came up recently. We were looking at the police station going through the approval process. We did have a committee member that missed some meetings, and we wanted to see if he could vote on it. Come to find out, the town had never adopted this general law, so regardless, he couldn't vote on this matter. So this is just for future boards and commissions that have a member that has missed a public hearing, one public hearing meeting, and that they can still vote on that hearing eventually, as long as they sign an affidavit showing that they viewed the meeting, reviewed the evidence, and they're in a position to vote on the matter. Article number 7, to see if the town will vote to pursue, pursuant to sections 3-2B of the Home Rule Charter, to expressly authorize the Board of Selectmen to appoint one member to the Library Building Committee. This is what we discussed. I think it was at the goals meeting over the summer. If town meeting passes this, and town meeting also passes the library article, then the board can approve one member to serve on that committee. To see if the town, Article number 8, to see if the town will vote to authorize the Board of Selectmen to convey a portion or portions of vacant parcel of town-owned land located at 25R Putnam Hill Road. This is a piece of town-owned property. It has been, I think, forever. It was originally the site, the location of the septic field across the street from the high school. Currently, we have a treatment facility down at the school department that takes care of the waste, and there's no longer a septic field, so we discontinued essentially the septic field operation. I think one of the abutters wants to purchase this land to either extend his lot or whatever. But to do that, we need town meeting authorization to sell town-owned property. It's different from a foreclosure process, because the foreclosure process, we don't have to go to town meeting, we can just hold an auction and dispose of the property. But town-owned property is a different process. That's Article 8. Article 9 is also another disposition of property. This piece of property at 126 Mendon Road was actually a donation, I think, from Ruth Putnam. It was supposed to be used for school purposes. She granted us this land, I think, in the 1920s, give or take. And obviously, it's a very small parcel of land, and not appropriate for a school. And one of the abutters is interested in, buying this lot and extending his property. Prior to doing that, obviously, the school committee needs to vote to make this surplus. The second step is town meeting vote to dispose of the property and authorize essentially the Board of Selectmen to take appropriate actions.
Is a similar contingency exist in the previous article with the septic field? So
Yes.
the school committee would have to.
No, because that is town-owned property.
Okay.
This one was specifically
the
donated
schools.
to the school department, so the school department needed to vote to surplus this property. And what we typically do, as this board is well aware, the board will get control of the property, assuming town meeting votes that way, and then the board will authorize the treasurer to dispose of the property through appropriate processes, typically an auction, and then we will proceed with that matter. Article number 10, to see if the town will vote to waive the connection fee of $5,000 for the American Legion Dudley Gendron Post 414, 1456 Boston Road. This is, they are already connected to our sewer system. We have a policy of generally giving nonprofits a waiver on the connection fee. But to get that waiver, we need town meeting authorization to do that. The Board of Selectmen or the sewer commissioners can't grant that. The town meeting needs to authorize that. We've had the Manchog Water System get a waiver from the connection fee. The Senior Center, Manchog Fire, there are other nonprofits that have been granted waivers. The Dudley Gendron in particular is a veterans organization. They do a lot for the town of Sutton, as this board knows very well. So the sewer commissioners voted to grant this waiver. Obviously, town meeting would have to make this vote.
Okay.
Article number 11 and 12. These are two articles related to the recreational marijuana issue. It is a process that we need to follow after the vote was taken at the May town election. One is a zoning bylaw, and the second is a general bylaw. Both bylaws essentially restrict all uses of recreational marijuana, growing, retail, everything else other than what's allowed within the law. You can still grow 6 plants or whatever the law says at your own residence and et cetera, but it does prevent cultivators, testing facilities, manufacturers, retailers, et cetera. We were told by town council we need to adopt a zoning law and a general bylaw that make this permanent, if you will. Interestingly, the planning board continued their hearing on this matter. There was some discussion at the planning board to want to allow grow facilities, but not retail facilities. And I'm just passing this on because it's important that this board knows what the planning board is thinking. We have been contacted by a company that grows marijuana, and they grow it for medical use. And that was the company that was interested in the Gilmore Drive last lot company. And obviously, the board at that time wasn't interested in entertaining that, and they went about their way. Recently, they contacted us once again saying, look, we're still interested. And, obviously since then, we've passed the election passed this prohibition, if you will, on recreational marijuana. So they're interested in growing for medical marijuana, and they're interested in growing for recreational marijuana. So the planning board took a step back, realizing there could be a significant amount of revenue from a medical marijuana grow facility, obviously, but they want recreational marijuana grow facility as well. Jen Hager's working with town council to figure out, what happens if we pass this general bylaw and this zoning bylaw. And then we decide as a board or multiple boards that we would like to change this policy. All of a sudden there's a change of heart, and we figure, wow, we could get significant revenue if we authorize this. What's the process? I'm assuming you would have to go back to town meeting, go back for an election, town election, to see if the the community wants that as much as the boards want it. So it's a little complicated. So I don't know whether the planning board is going to put this on the warrant. I think at this point the warrant's set. They could probably pass over or take some motion to deal with this, but there is some reconsideration of the growing aspect of this because of the potential revenue to the town. So, I know this is a tough situation. It's just, the board in the past, my understanding was okay with medical marijuana grow facility on Gilmore Drive for the most part, but we had a real issue with recreational marijuana. So it's just...
I just had a question on that part. Now that we put the prohibition, so-called prohibition on it,
Yeah.
what is there really a difference between where medical marijuana and recreational, or is it just where it's getting shipped or sold? Like, would the marijuana be the same, but some is being sold to a medical treatment center and some being sold to, Chuck's smoke shop or whatever?
Yeah.
But would the marijuana itself be the same?
I don't know. My assumption is there's a difference. Medical marijuana is probably more specialized. And obviously, we would have some controls over that. We would be able to inspect. We would be able to hire inspectors to go through and determine what they're growing.
Recreational would have kind of...
My assuming there's a way to determine what's recreational and what's for marijuana, what's for medical marijuana. And I think the company knew that, and that's why they were pushing back and saying, well, we'd really like to grow for recreational. So if we let them open for medical marijuana, there needs to be some sort of control that we know that they're not growing for recreational marijuana.
To your question, we actually had an individual from Cambridge that came in one snowy night. I don't know if you were here that meeting, and he proposed a smaller facility over behind where the Blackstone Cafe was. And he had mentioned that point, that there is actually ability to produce different types, some more stronger than the other.
But
so I would assume,
we wouldn't have the same ability to go in and regulate
well,
it.
that's the thing. Would they get a medicinal license, or would they get a recreational license from the state, or is it a joint license?
Well, if this company, ends up locating there, they would want both licenses. And if the town prohibits recreational growing, then they would be prohibited from growing it. And whatever controls, state controls or local controls that we have, we would forbid them from growing for recreational use. It would be solely for medical marijuana use.
The question, if we're going to talk about this now, the question that always has been there for me, and I've never had a lot of clarity on this, is there always, or could there be separation between a grow facility and a dispensing facility, or does it always happen at the same place?
Well, according to town council, Jen Hager, the few of us that have been working on this, it's your question again?
So it's never been clear to me whether there's any distinction between where you grow and process marijuana and where you actually dispense it.
I think if if the planning board either pulled these or passed over these articles or don't, depending, we would limit the distribution or sale, a retail facility at that site. Would be solely for growing. And I think that's the feeling of the planning board, and I think it's the feeling of the Board of Selectmen. So it would be only for growing. And I know there are some situations on Gilmore Drive where some companies have done some retail out of those facilities, the lawn care and other companies. But that would be prohibited under the new article, or not article, but the election question that's presented to the town.
It was in May, right?
It was in May, but, you know, the planning board obviously has some reservations about it right now. They're feeling like we went too far by prohibiting grow facilities. So I don't know what's going to happen, or I'm obviously presuming, but they have a hearing this Monday night. They continued it. They are contemplating that they would like a potential to allow recreational grow facilities. But I would say that we will have an additional election because the town voted.
Right.
That this is now the town's.
On 2 instances, the town voted against it.
Exactly.
Right.
So the question is whether planning board goes this way and holds off on these articles. We will have to have an additional election to ask that question: are you okay with grow facilities or not?
So, Mr. Chairman, I was planning to hold my questions till the end, but since we're talking about this, you know, prior to the meeting, reading these articles, you know, to me, these were just housekeeping articles in order to get the bylaws to match up to the votes that were actually taken. And I was sort of commenting that it would be curious if people didn't vote for this, because then you would have had one vote on one hand that said one thing, and now, you know, a different thing in the bylaws.
Yeah.
But to the opposite point, not voting these, you know, so if the planning board wants to pull them, seems to me like, you know, they're not codifying the votes that have already been taken. So that doesn't.
It's not the end-all, be-all, because we do have a moratorium on recreational marijuana until the fall of 2018. So town meeting also approved that moratorium. So we have time to work this out, probably May town meeting as well as potentially fall of 2018 town meeting. And that was the original intent of these articles, to be honest. That's why we put them on it. It was just housekeeping of making sure that the vote taken in May is now solid with these 2 additional provisions. The one hiccup is that the planning board continued their public hearing, and I'm just letting the Board of Selectmen know that that's what's going on behind the scenes, or not behind the scenes.
Right.
Those are public meetings. So that's my understanding of what's going on. So, any other
Thank you,
questions
Jim.
on that?
Thank you on that. I just wasn't sure if they could regulate, somehow draft in there the regulation as a medical facility for a recreational facility would be the same.
Yeah.
If we set the rules that, you know, no matter what, we still have, the inspections are still the same, whether it's medical or recreational, because it's at the same facility.
Yeah, I don't know what the difference is. I think there is a difference. I think you have to go through a different licensing process to have recreational grow. And obviously the company that's interested in coming here wants the town to allow recreational grow facility as well
They
as
know about
medical.
our deer population?
What's that?
Our deer population? Teaching John.
With that being the case, because they're licensed through the state, to the earlier point about policing, would we even have the authority to enter the building if they were a state licensed facility?
Well, I mean, I think we would, because they're a business in our community. I think the building commissioner, the Board of Health has some authority over it. I think it's primarily licensed at the state level, but the town is definitely involved with that. And I think that the town would be able to go into the facility, obviously announced and you know, the fire department making sure their sprinkler system's in order, the, you know, police and
The facilities were secure.
health as
Yeah.
well.
All right, thank
Thank you.
All right.
Article number 13, to see if the town will vote to amend the zoning bylaws regarding signs. The issue here is that the sign bylaw is silent on municipal facilities. So the sign we have outside here, outside Town Hall, that you know, we change every once in a while, as well as the signs down at the school department, are not mentioned in the sign bylaw. So if they're not mentioned, then I think they're prohibited. So this is, allowing town signs. Obviously, we're building a new police station. We'd like a town sign in front of the police station, and that's what sort of brought this to a front. And we started re-examining the municipal signs, and I think Jen Hager knew all about this, but, the rest of us didn't. So this will specifically allow town signs up to 20 square feet maximum. Article number 14 is, this one's tricky, and this is to amend the zoning bylaws, non-conforming uses, structures, and lots, section I.C.3C, by adding the following sentence at the end of the section, or act to do anything in relation thereto. A non-conforming structure on a non-conforming lot may be altered in accordance with Section 2D. So if anybody understands that, I give them a prize. So, according to this write-up, our current bylaw prescribes a process for altering non-conforming structures on non-conforming lots. As there has always been an interpretation, there has already been an interpretation challenge to the bylaw. The building department has asked for this housekeeping article to make the process crystal clear. Now, this is obviously complex. I don't fully understand it, to be honest. The planning board is sponsoring this and recommending passage of it. I think it does help with the process. Jen obviously couldn't be here tonight, but she will be available at the Finance Committee meeting to explain this a little bit.
Well, I seem to recall, I think this was a recent article that was adopted recently at town meeting, because I remember her coming in talking about non-conforming lots with the non-conforming structures, which technically are in violation, and so if it's housekeeping, it's going to make it smoother.
Yeah.
At least, for vetting by the building inspector, then I think we're all for it.
Yeah, it's complex, but I just, to be honest, I don't want to, say that I know exactly what it says, because
We'll tune in next Tuesday.
it's complex. Or at least it's confusing. I don't know how complex it is. Article 15 is to see if the town will vote to fund the library construction. The article in particular asked to raise and appropriate $11,190,985. Obviously, this board knows that we are getting $4,900,000.
5.15 million.
So 5.151 million from the state, MBLC. So this is the town share of this property, but town council, wrote this article, and they insist that we authorize the full amount to be expended. And that's all. That's the warrant.
True. Okay.
A couple of questions. Thank you, Jim.
Sure.
A couple of quick questions. Going back to Article 2 on the OPEB funding.
Yes.
So remind me, is that the total OPEB funding for the year? Or is there already some OPEB funding in the budget, and this is
There
in
is.
addition?
Yes. The policy that the board adopted, I think last summer, I don't know what month, but essentially had a number of steps in that policy. The first step is to appropriate $100,000 out of the general fund for OPEB trust. The second one was to, or one of the other items was to appropriate surplus overlay funds certified by the assessors, requested by the town accountant and myself. That's where this $50,000 comes from. The other funding structure in the OPEB funding strategy was revenue from the cell tower at Town Farm Road. All that revenue would be going to the OPEB trust fund as well. So I think those were the three major funding sources of that fund. And I think we're in a very healthy position with all the funding, overlay as well. But we wanted to be conservative and just appropriate 50,000 of the overlay surplus.
Okay. How quickly will that be funded if that gets approved?
Fully funded?
No, just the 50 grand.
The day after town meeting.
Yeah.
Day after town meeting?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. The Board of Assessors have already written a letter to myself authorizing that, so town meeting needs to vote, and then it's done.
Okay. Article 3, you talked about essentially using the increase in the new growth number as it was certified.
Yep.
So I just have a question about, you said the differential is about 250 grand. So that 250, is that essentially now part of the levy base going forward, the full 250 year over year over year?
Yes.
That's the way that works?
Yes.
Okay. No, I think I got it. I don't remember any other questions. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you.
Mike?
Mike?
Thanks, Tim.
I've got just one that wasn't, Article 8 and 9, the sale of the land and the approval to sell the land.
Yep.
You'd mentioned, so in the past, it's gone to auction, but seeing that we have two potential buyers, what would be the set price on that? Would it be market value?
The treasurer will kind of work for the value of those properties. They're very small lots, and they're not buildable lots. So I don't know how we're going to come up with the value on those properties, to be honest. The auction is just, we won't be out on site. It will probably be held up here in the Board of Selectmen's meeting room, and the process, setting the price will be set, and I don't know how that price will be set, but I will let you know when the price is set. My guess is they will go for a relatively small amount. We won't sell a corner piece of property at Mendon Road and Medbury Lane at that corner, probably for no more than $5,000, I'm thinking. And probably the same with the one on Putnam Hill Road. Again, it's just a small parcel, non-buildable. It could be added to the tax rolls by one of the abutters purchasing it. That's a positive, so it's probably a minimal cost on that lot as well.
And where would that, I don't know if you covered it, where would the cash from those sales go into? Do we know or not yet?
Probably into the general fund.
Okay.
Because it's not a tax title. We don't have to pay back taxes, et cetera, on those parcels.
Perfect.
Sure.
And that was the only one I had. Thank you, Jim.
Right, sure.
For the great update.
Yeah.
Update.
Anything else?
I'm good.
Anything else?
No, thank you.
All right. If I would, I'd like to take a moment to speak about the new library project. Before I do so, I'd like to dispel a little bit of troubling information that I've heard circulating within our community. The discussion of Article 15 of the 2017 Fall Town Meeting warrant is not in any way, shape, or form involving closing the current library. If town meeting rejects this project, the library, its staff, and its programs will remain in place. Now, as many people in the community may be aware, John, Dave, Ray, and myself took time out of our personal lives to respond to a request by the Chronicle about our opinions on this project. The reason why we all did so is because the four of us felt it was important to voice our opinion on this matter in a medium that reaches the largest audience possible. As selectmen, it is our duty to protect the interests of the town as a whole, not just certain constituencies, in both the short and the long term. Without any discussion amongst ourselves, the four of us, after analyzing the potential impact that this project will have upon our community, independently reached a similar conclusion. Now is not the time for this project. Why? Simple. We are currently only a quarter of the way into paying the debt service for the school, which undeniably was a necessity at the time. In addition, this past May, voters decided to finally move forward with a new police station, which not only was a necessity, but it also had been a goal for a series of previous boards of selectmen going back many, many years. Unfortunately, there is a cost that comes with every significant decision this town makes. Starting next year, our debt service payments will increase to approximately $3.8 million for fiscal year 2019. It should be noted that this in itself is the highest level incurred debt in this town's history. If the town decides to move forward with a third major capital project in less than a decade, our debt service increases even further in fiscal year 2020 to $4.35 million. Now, it has been said that if you build it, you have to pay for it. But to me, that's naive. And as a guiding principle for this board, it's irresponsible. As we all know, every act taken has consequences. If we are blind to this simple truth, decisions made today could easily create serious and lasting harm for the town of Sutton for many years to come. The most significant consequence of this historic debt level could potentially threaten our town's AA bond rating. Our bond rating is like your personal credit score. The higher the score, the better credit is available. For a municipality such as our own, our AA rating provides the town a better chance to borrow at lower interest rates. For those of you who watch our meetings regularly, you may have seen instances when the financial team brought before us opportunities to secure short-term, low-interest loans to pay off existing capital items. This allowed us not only to pay them off faster, but for significantly less money in the long run. The ability to do so is one of the tools used by the financial team to allow you as a taxpayer to keep more of your money in your own pocket, and for us to maintain existing services. If, after our next audit, however, it is determined that our long-term liability is too high, our bond rating potentially could be threatened. And if that happens, well, to put it simply, we have to pay more with every borrowing we make. Or, even worse, we could miss out on future short-term opportunities. Now, another potential consequence of this decision arises from the term within the grant itself. As stated in the first clause, and I quote, "A new, remodeled, or renovated library building will be planned for a minimum operational life of 20 years." Now, as many of you may not be aware, there are several basic services that cities and towns are legally obligated to provide, such as schools, police, fire, even a tree warden. Even in times of financial difficulty, these services must meet the minimum standards required by law. In addition to the required services, Sutton also provides other optional services for the benefit of our community. Marion's Camp, the Senior Center, the Food Pantry, the Transfer Station, and yes, even the library falls within this category. Now, why is this an important decision detail to consider? Well, simply put, the second clause of the grant agreement reads as follows, and again I quote, "In the event that the building is not kept continuous use as a free public library for 20 years, the city or town must return the amount of the grant awards plus interest to the board within 60 days of the date the library building falls out of compliance." In effect, this agreement will put the library before every other service in town, mandatory or not. Now think about that for a moment. For the next 20 years, regardless of the financial realities of the day, future residents and officials will have to pay for the library before everything else, before the schools, before the roads, before even our senior center, or suffer an economic blow that would devastate us both as individual taxpayers and on a town level itself. Now, my third and final point on this isn't so much a consequence per se, as it is a hidden cost that is yet to be discussed anywhere that I've seen. To enter Shaw property, one must enter via Shaw Lane. It crosses directly through known wetlands. Additionally, the site selected by the library trustees for the proposed project lies within the 800-foot protective radius required by the Army Corps of Engineers to protect ecosystems in and around vernal pools. Now, why is this important? Simply, to build this new building, the town will not only have to shoulder the burden of hiring an outside certified environmental engineer to be involved in this project, but we will also have to apply for a series of special permits from both MEPA, which is the Massachusetts Environmental Protection Agency, and FEPA, the Federal Environmental Protection Agency. To obtain such permits, agents from both the state and federal governments will have to come and investigate the site. This in itself could take years. Then, if, for whatever reason, these agencies reject the application, the town will still have to pay for these additional costs. While I am not going to mislead the public in any way to make an estimate on how much this will cost, but from what I've read, the costs are extremely high. So much so that the only way the town may be able to pay for this is by seeking an additional debt exclusion, which of course further compounds the issues I addressed previously. So what does this mean? Simple. This means that all of the work done by the town and its boards, committees, and commissions in recent years, such as providing extra funding well above state requirements to the schools, or offering programs such as the town beach at Marion's Camp, may be threatened. Further, new programs which could benefit the entire community, such as my proposal which I presented to the board at our goals meeting to develop a capital fund to expand potential road repair, or John's long-term goal, which he has had for many years to bring sewerage to the center of town, will have to be shelved indefinitely. Ultimately, the short and long-term impact of this additional debt is too high, in my opinion. Therefore, I, as both a member of and chairman of this board, dedicated to serving this town that I love, believe, in concurrence with 3 of my colleagues, that, as hard as this may be to hear for some, now is not the time for this project. And further, Shaw Farm is not the proper location for any project of this scale. Thank you for listening and for your consideration. All right, next up on the agenda is Town Administrator's Update. Jim?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a few updates for the board. I have actually quite a few, but I'll try to go through them as quick as possible. Aggregation. Obviously, it's that time of year. The board agreed to enter into a 1-year agreement with the aggregation services. The town didn't want to get into a system that we weren't comfortable with, so the board decided to do just 1 year. We entered into a deal with Public Power at 8.4 cents per kilowatt hour for a period of 12 months, which was a very attractive rate. We would like to begin this process again, similar to last year. Our plan is to procure electricity supply in the months of October and maybe early November, becoming effective July 1st. On October 3rd, I will ask the Board of Selectmen to vote to authorize the chairman to sign an aggregation contract as long as it is below the National Grid basic offer rate. So similar to last year, I think John Hebert signed the agreement, but this year, we'll hopefully have rates in probably mid to late October to sign. And I will obviously keep the board well up to date and let you know what the prices are looking at prior to signing a contract at that time. Brush chipping at the transfer station. We do this twice a year, and we are going to offer it again on Saturday, October 14th from 8 a.m. to 12 noon. It was a very successful effort last May, and again, our plan is to do it twice a year, and hopefully the residents will be able to take advantage of that. Chip seal top coat. We are currently in the process of applying, we obviously already have, chip seal to the roads that were paved earlier this summer. Include Welsh Road, Uxbridge Road from Central Turnpike to Mendon Road, Old Providence Road, 8 Lots Road from Boston Road to West Sutton Road. These roads should be good for an additional 10 to 15 years. I know there's been some talk about why we use chip seal in favor of another level of asphalt as the top course. There's some benefits to using chip seal. The biggest benefit for the town of Sutton is cost. If we did a top level asphalt coat, it probably would have been $100,000 more expensive. Which would have meant that we would do, one, maybe 1.5 roads less than we were able to do. Chip seal is obviously a little frustrating to deal with. People thought that the leveling course, the first level of asphalt, was the final. And it was nice driving down those roads. You could get up ahead of speed and, make your way home. But obviously, the seal coating, chip seal, does provide some additional traction. Also slows down the speed a little bit. So there are some positive and negatives. The extent of how much time additionally we get for using these roads, using chip seal as a top coat, you probably get 10 to 15 years. If you use asphalt, you probably get 14 to 18 years. So it's there's somewhere in the middle. So it is more affordable, far more affordable, and it is a different application. So there has been some concern out there in the public, but I just wanted to let people know we are aware. We purposely went with this. We're trying to get more roads done with a limited amount of money for the town. Goddard Lodge rehab. After the original bids came in over budget, John Kutzer, Jen Hager worked closely with the architect to make changes in the design. We went out to bid again, and sub-bids were open on September 14th. The low bid on the painting sub-bid was Northeast Painting at $30,470. The low bid on electrical sub-bid was Icon West at $39,000. The GC bids are due this Thursday, September 21st. So I feel like these bids are coming in much more appropriate than they were in the first bid. The painting came in at $59,000, so that's roughly half the cost, and electrical came in close to $55,000. So we obviously made a significant change in the bid structure and cut out a lot of the extras in this project. Police station, the building committee had a meeting on September 11th and decided to delay the general contracting bids until October 5th. We're still awaiting final approval from the Planning Board and Conservation Commission. We've put a lot of work into this project over the last week and a half. The Conservation Commission meeting is tomorrow night at 7 o'clock it starts, but the public hearing for the police station is probably not until 7:30, 8 o'clock. I don't know the exact time, but a little bit later in the evening. And hopefully we have done enough to get approval at the Conservation Commission. Library Building Committee. We're in the process of putting together the Library Building Committee. We're looking for someone to participate on this committee that has construction / engineering experience. Obviously, this is pending town meeting approval and approval at a special election, but we would like to just send out a call to anybody that with engineering or general contracting experience to be involved. This was a lesson I learned through the police building committee that, I don't think we have enough building construction experience on that committee, and obviously we're feeling it a little bit with the approval process that we're going through. We're sort of missing some things that should have been picked up earlier. So trying to get this right, obviously I've been at this a few years, but, you're always learning. And I think, if we add somebody with contracting experience on the library committee, it'll be a better committee going forward. Finance public hearing is this coming Tuesday, September 26th at 6:30 p.m. in this meeting room, and the Board of Selectmen will sign the warrant on October 3rd. A couple other updates. The annual golf tournament to benefit the Mike Chizzy Food Pantry will happen on Friday, October 6th at 9 a.m. at the Clearview Golf Course in Millbury. Obviously, the board is invited to attend. The green fees will be the same as they have been in the past few years, $35, and whole sponsorships will be $100. So obviously, I'd love to see the board attend if you can. It's a fun time, and the employees are supposed to have fun that day. So,
Will Laura have the sign-up forms?
yes, she does. She does. I'm sorry, and they're available down at the town clerk's office. I have a couple of other updates that came up since the agenda was posted. The first one is Fire Chief Matt Balsito was recently nominated to Chairman / President of District 7 Fire Massachusetts. That's a big step. Obviously he's been very involved with District 7, which is, integral to the mutual aid process with the communities Worcester southward, essentially. 450,000 people are covered by District 7, and the chief was nominated. He will be appointed as chairman/president of District 7 a week from Thursday, the 28th, at the Dudley Gendron, which is nice because the meeting was originally planned for Southbridge, the headquarters of District 7, and we got it moved to a local venue. So the chief will be sworn in at 6 p.m. The board is obviously invited to attend if any of the board is interested in attending.
What's the date, Jim?
September 28th, which is a week from this Thursday. And again, it's I don't know the process. I think there's a small reception, and then there's a meal after the swearing in, and then there's a board meeting following that. I don't think you have to stay for the board meeting, but I think that at least showing up would be great if you're available. Obviously I'm proud of the chief. He's done a terrific job, and he's kind of followed in the Chief Toll was president of Central Mass Chiefs. John Kuchar is vice chairman of the state BBRS, Board of Building Regulations and Standards. So we've got a wide range of employees serving the greater state. So that's a positive. The last thing I want to mention is free cash certification. We had free cash certified within a 3-day period of time. I think Tim delivered the balance sheet to DOR last Friday, and I think on Monday we got certified. So record turnaround with no questions, which is terrific, in the amount of $1,329,196. So that's $1.3 million in free cash, which is great news for the town. The sewer enterprise fund retained earnings was $175,394. The transfer station enterprise fund retained earnings was $49,332. Again, both positive stories. All three are positive stories. And keep in mind that $1,300,000 in free cash, we didn't spend $300,000 in free cash from the prior fiscal year, so we carried it over as a starting point. So, and we'd like to do the same with this free cash number, is just carry that number over. The result is we got extra money from tax revenues. We got extra money from some local receipts in the budget, and expenditures less than the budget was $230,000. So $500,000 was us spending less than had been appropriated at town meeting, and $300,000 that was carried over from the previous fiscal year. So that's all positive. And that's all I have for updates, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thanks, Jim. Dave?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Jim, for the update. A couple of questions, if I could.
Sure.
Can you, on the aggregation piece, can you give us, a little overview of how you think the last year went?
Oh, I think it's gone very well. There have always going to be some hiccups here and there. Doreen DeFazio, when she comes in, she usually comes in twice a week. And she gets a call every once in a while from a resident that wasn't enrolled in the original program. And that's often as a result of they were enrolled in a private supplier, right, other than National Grid. And what you need to do, and I did this for Mrs. Chizzy, is that you unenroll from your private provider, and then you go on National Grid, and at that point you can be picked up by what was Public Power, and I don't know who the new carrier will be, but it is a process, and it is complicated, especially for those people that don't pay much attention to this type of stuff. So we try to walk them through it and help them through that, and even make those calls for them for those people that are uncomfortable with that.
And we had an opt-out provision, which means if you don't opt out, you're in. Mm-hmm. Do we have any sense of what the participation rate was? Does that a number that we know?
You know, I don't have those numbers, but I'll get them. Because I think that Peregrine, our intermediary in this whole process, has those numbers,
Yep.
and I'll get them at a future board meeting, because I think that's revealing. My guess is very few people opted out of this, because you're automatically opted in, and you have to make a conscious effort to opt out of it. And there are a few, but I think it's very few.
Yeah, I think that was a good way to do it, a good provision.
Yeah.
Jumping forward to the chip seal top coat, I appreciate you covering that particular topic. Just down the street from where I live, that was done, and I guess I was surprised to see that. I didn't realize that there was another process that needed to be applied, but so just good to hear about it.
Yeah, and I accept some responsibility, because I should have more clearly communicated that was just the base course, and that would be a top coat on top of that, and that would have started the conversation rather than reacting as we are now. So I apologize for that, but so that's just to give you a little bit of background on that.
God at large, I don't have much to say other than, particularly John and Jen, I know put a lot of work into this, but the entire process of rewriting the bid package, I think, looks like it's having the benefits that we anticipated, so it's good to see. Hope that continues. The chairman of the Finance Committee is here, so I would encourage everyone around town to come to his meeting next week and have you say on the items on the warrant. So it's a great place to have some input, and we always encourage public input. So hope to be there. And also looking forward to the golf tournament. It is a great event every year, and looks like my schedule will allow me to be there. So I'm looking forward to that.
Good.
And Jim, regarding Matt and his nomination, congratulations to him. That's a terrific thing.
Yeah.
And you also mentioned the point that came to mind when you first mentioned this. We have had a number of people around town that have been involved, as you say, as sort of for the larger good, and it represents our town well. Also to just pick up John as his chairmanship for the CMRPC position that he holds.
Good point.
But we have been well represented around Blackstone Valley and Worcester County. So, and I guess the state actually as a whole, with John in particular. So,
Right.
Congratulations to Matt, and great job for all of those people for representing us. So,
Good.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thanks, Dave. Mike?
It seems like you covered it pretty well, Jim, with the updates. Definitely congratulations to Matt, and I will be there on the 28th at 6 o'clock to watch that. And it's good to see that the bids are coming in, and they're more reasonable numbers now that the plans have been redesigned or
Yep.
reconfigured to be more practical.
Yeah.
than it sounds like they were at the beginning. That would be that's it. The police station. Oh, I got it. The pushing it back, is that throwing anything off, or is it starting to get to the point where it's
No,
pushed out a few
ultimately,
times?
we'll deal with it. Obviously, it would have been nice to get a shovel in the ground at the beginning of September.
Yeah.
But what we're trying to build is the right police station, and if we have to delay it a little bit to make sure that all the boards are comfortable with the process and the building itself, then I think that's a wise decision.
Excellent.
If we don't get a shovel in this fall, then we'll wait until the early spring.
Yeah.
It's just a few months, but the police department will be living in this facility for a long time, and I think that we want to get it straight from the start. So, yeah.
Good.
I'm comfortable with the process. I'm comfortable with delaying the bid openings until we get it straight, until we get full approval and everybody's comfortable with the building, then we'll be okay.
Excellent. And the golf tournament, just waiting for a fourth. We'll be there.
Cool.
One more person. Just need a return call. So,
Yeah. All right.
but I look forward to it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, Mike, thanks. I think you covered all the major points brilliantly. I did have two minor questions, but a couple of comments will be sprinkled in along the way. The chip seal, just so that we were clear, this was part of the original allocation from Chapter 90, correct?
That's correct.
All right, so the figure that we had presented, that was part of it, or was this some of the residuals that were left over?
Nope, this is all part of that number.
Okay, perfect. Goddard Lodge, again, brilliant. Again, I think the first bid came in almost double, what we
Yeah.
were looking to, but, just scaling it back down makes it more appropriate, saving some money, that's definitely a good thing. Building committee, to your point, we want to make sure that the station gets done the right way. So it has been a lengthy process. Planning and conservation have brought up multiple issues, but I thank them, because it's been not only educational for me to be present in many of those meetings, but also the fact that they're willing to listen to concerns of the residents. And we're making sure, as you said, that this is the station that's going to be proper to serve the needs of the town,
Right.
not just tomorrow, but for many years to come. So
Right.
I thank, again, conservation and planning for their due diligence.
Yeah.
Golf tournament, I'll be there. I'm the fourth on the team, so that's going to be fun, always is. FinCom, definitely must-see TV, but I will do my best to make sure I'm here as well. I will also be there for Chief Belcito. Matt, well-earned, well-deserved, and I'm very proud of you. Thank you for your service to our community and the district as a whole. And that brings me right to my last question. You mentioned the sewer enterprise fund.
Yes.
How much money was that?
What was certified was $175,394. Obviously, if we looked at the total retained earnings in the sewer connection fees, et cetera, it's probably close to $900,000. So very healthy amount in the sewer holdings.
Yeah, I wrote down a 1 with a couple of zeros, but.
Yeah, and the transfer station as well, I got to give them credit. I mean, their budget's only $130,000, well, maybe $140,000. So to have retained earnings of almost $50,000 is healthy.
Yeah.
That
65%.
well, and that's a long time coming and a long process. I mean, we're at the point in the my early days here that it wasn't making money, then we were making $3,000, then we were losing $3,000. It was up and down until we got the right people involved, working with Mark Brigham and the transfer station operators at the time. And now with Dave Arsenal down there, it's a fine run machine at this point in time. So
Yeah, and
we're all wishing Dave the quick recovery from his back surgery, and he's making progress. Hopefully, he's back soon.
you took the words out of my mouth, because I can tell you, as someone who uses the transfer station is Dave's baby. And all of the savings that have been realized are due mostly because of his hard work. He tries squeezing out every last penny that he can. So, Dave, we're wishing you the best, and we're looking forward to you seeing you back down at that point soon. All right, I have nothing else. So why don't we wrap it up with announcements, Selectmen's Roundtable, and correspondence. Dave?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I'm going to cheat and go back to the update because I meant to ask you something I forgot.
Sure.
If that's okay, Mr.
That's allowed.
I wanted to, can you just go back to free cash certification? Sure. And I wonder if we could just get a little bit of a summary of where the free cash came from.
Yep.
So you mentioned $300,000 of free
Yeah,
cash.
let
that
me,
had rolled over.
essentially $300,000 was carried over from the prior fiscal year, which is FY16. Then you have expenditures in the budget that the departments didn't buy anything with. So they were essentially unexpended expenses within the budget, and that amounted to $230,000. Tax revenues in excess of the budget. So this was a great job by Lisa Trost and the tax collector as well, Donna Wood. We collected $172,000 over what was budgeted. Now, we budget conservatively, but it's still an effort to get more than we actually budget. So kudos to them. Local receipts in excess of budget, that was $622,000. Now, the local receipts breakdown of the local receipts, because there are a number of items within the local receipts, sale of property. We used Municipid this year, and we made $70,000 off the sale of property. Inspectional services, both building, plumbing, electrical, Board of Health, we brought an additional $72,000 from inspectional services. Motor vehicle excise tax, we brought in $194,000 more than that was budgeted. You know, there are others as well. Medicare receipts, 69,000, almost 70,000 more than was budgeted. We budget 30, so that means we collected $100,000, and it costs us maybe $10,000 for a school department part-time employee to run the Medicare system. So it cost us $10,000. It gets us $100,000 in gains. So a net of $90,000 because we actually go after the Medicare reimbursement or Medicaid reimbursement. SRECs in rental properties, $70,000 from SRECs. Now, SRECs are difficult because the price always changes. So we budget conservatively, and we often get more money than we budget. But, you know, I don't want to budget aggressively on that number and come in less than we budgeted. And rooms and meals taxes, that's $50,000, $57,000. So there are a few numbers that, you know, the motor vehicle excise tax concerns me a little bit. So Tim and I are talking about increasing that local receipt a little bit to account for, you know, particularly the motor vehicle excise tax, because that's trending consistently at that level. So, you know, the worst case for us is obviously over budgeting this and local receipts come in less than we are budgeted. That's one situation we don't want to have happen. But there are some areas that we're looking at contemplating increasing that local receipt specific number.
Yeah, if you have to pick your problems, you want to have free cash certified rather than being over budget and you know, have a deficit position, of course. But you know, I think to your point just there, you don't want to have massive free cash numbers every year as well. You know, there's a balance in there someplace.
It certainly is.
You can be too conservative in your budgeting at times.
I agree, because, you know, obviously, I think overall the town health is pretty stable. Mm-hmm. You know, our one issue is not reserve funds. It's not capital stabilization fund. That fund is more than healthy. Free cash stabilization fund is well over $2 million. The issue is the operating budget. That's the one issue we have, I think, as a town, is our annual revenues are not necessarily keeping up with our annual costs. And so any time we can increase our local receipts to add more revenue to the picture, I think that's a positive. You know, obviously there are continuing demands on the budget. The school department is healthy, I think, in my opinion, and I think Ted Friend's opinion as well, that, you know, we don't rest on our laurels, but right now they've got a healthy, healthy appropriation. They are the, what are the funds?
I know what you mean.
The reserve funds. School choice. School choice is the big one, and that's right now at, you know, almost $800,000. So that, again, we're building that number up, where we spent it down to almost the receivable of $300,000. Now we're letting it build up, so that we are building up those reserve funds as well as a SPED stabilization fund. We're looking to build these extra funds to as almost reserve funds for the school department.
Yeah, so kind of shock absorbers in a way for when you have items that come up. You know, once you have, I don't know how to really say this, but once you have certified free cash, then, you know, we've taken many years to remove the use of one-time expenditure or one-time revenues to fund our budget. So once you certify free cash, really the goal is not to use these funds to help our ongoing annual budget. So, you know, some of these shock absorber kind of things can help in that regard when you have, you know, something like a big expenditure come up, if you've got that. But, you know, that's why I sort of promote sort of the balance of where you come out on free cash, and continue to encourage us to not be overly conservative in our budgeting.
Yeah.
So anyway, thank you for
Good point.
Thank you for that
Yeah.
summary. On my roundtable thing, I just wanted to mention one thing. We had at my house what turned out to be a very minor medical issue that we ultimately needed the EMTs to come to the house for. And it was very minor, so no issues there. But we have these services around town, and when you find yourself in need and you have to take advantage of them, I guess I just wanted to thank the EMTs. They did a great job. They were very professional and very helpful in a time of need. So
good.
that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Mike?
That's fantastic, Dave. That is. To hear that.
Yep.
It's refreshing.
That was good.
That's great. First, for a roundtable, great cookout at the Dudley Genren. Wanted to say that it sounds like I didn't hear any numbers and figures, but of what compared to last year and what they did, but it was a good time. Got wet. Had some fun in the dunk tank. We have a volunteer here for next year.
My arm still hurts from throwing it.
Yeah, Selectmen Hall bought a lot of balls to dunk, Selectman Lemanik and I. And he bought a lot of people balls, too.
Yeah,
But
it was
fun.
didn't stop.
Yeah. So that to cover that point there, I do have a point that came up tonight after Selectman Lemanik's presentation or his speech. It just brings to my mind, is there something that's missing that was covered in any meetings about these permits or the Army Corps of Engineers coming in with Shaw's? Now, I go way back to the time we purchased the land. If this is something that's an issue that on Shaw's Lane for any projects, are we going to have issues in the future with ever developing anything up there?
Yeah.
Did you read something or did you?
Yeah, I came in and I spoke to people in this building that mentioned that there are potential issues that were
Is there
not known
issues or
at
we-
the time, potentially.
Okay.
Potentially. They're going to come in, I think under both federal and state law, they're going to come in and they're going to survey the site, and they're going to make a determination because the 800-foot barrier fluctuates
Right.
based upon the way the water flows. But they need to come in and they need to study the site. So there could be issues, or it might be a moot point.
Is this Shaw's Lane or is this up on Shaw's farm on the property?
Both,
that we're
actually.
looking
Both.
at? Oh, okay.
Yeah, anytime, and we went through this back in 2009 and 10 with the charrette that was done for Shaw's Farm.
Right.
There are maps in my office that show the vernal pools and the setback on the vernal pools, which is 800 feet. But anytime you develop more than 5,000 square feet of that roadway, extending that roadway to make it, a two-lane drive, then it will require an Army Corps of Engineers permit. So, it's just, things can go up there, but there are additional potential costs for that work to take place.
And that's the only reason why I mentioned it. Just something to keep and bear in mind.
The
No.
permitting is all included in the budget. You should be aware of that as well, though, for all of that.
So that was going to be my second question. When we talked a little bit about, or when it was mentioned, these astronomical charges, do we have any literature or anything that states either these charges or what's covered or not covered? Yes.
Pardon?
The possible astronomical charges?
It's just, it's the licensing fee themselves, which
do
costs are
do
costly.
we have any figures of?
I'm not saying any numbers.
No, I don't know that we have any figures at this point, but obviously.
Any literature that shows or states the readings that were read on what we have that we could potentially come across and what's budgeted? I guess I'm asking if we do have it in the budget and it is there that's budgeted into their project, or they say, or that the library trustees say that it's budgeted, are we going to potentially run into issues where we're going to come in way over that? That's when you said that.
Yeah, that's my concern. Yeah, I don't know. But again, I read some literature. I saw the Army Corps going into other states and into other towns, and the one reoccurring theme that I saw is it was sizable. But again, I'm not going to speak to any issues.
To educate myself.
Because I don't want to, because
No,
I don't
just
know the
wasn't sure.
conditions down
To
there.
educate myself, do you have the name of those literatures or the?
Just do a search for, yep,
All right, that did,
for Army Corps of Engineers.
Perfect.
Site surveys and things like that.
thank you. And, yeah, that's just, because that, when you mentioned that, I started thinking about Shaw's Farm in general, and all the talk, and, to clear the air out there, is that we have potentially fields, the main purpose of the purchase is,
I've had
would
this
it ever have even,
Well, I've had this discussion with some of the people that were involved back in 2005 and 6 and for purchasing this property.
oh, you weren't, it's,
I wasn't here, no, because I inherited this, actually, I closed on the property, but, it's just my opinion, and there are different opinions out there. I don't know that due diligence was done on this particular site, 135 acres. We did the due diligence after the fact. When we owned the property. We brought Gates Layton up there.
hey, there's a leopard frog type, right? Like, wow, we didn't know that was there.
We had, I think, 4 or 5 vernal pools with 800-foot setbacks in each one. There's very little of that site that can be developed. We're looking at a track and field at that site. But we've had to rearrange that track and field. Our original concept was to put it parallel to the road. You just walk in and, park up at the top and then walk down to the track, and then some access off the Putnam Hill Road. But it would be in the middle of a wetland. So it's complicated, and ultimately, to get outside the vernal pool, the track goes to almost perpendicular to Putnam Hill Road along the side area, so it's completely outside the wetlands. Now, we can work with the conservation, et cetera, but
Yeah.
if I was involved, I would ask for more due diligence to be involved prior to purchasing this. And, it was a positive because we got the capital stabilization fund out of it, and that's a positive. But purchasing the land for the first time, I probably would have asked additional questions. And
That was my thought, and as I hear more and more, just different facts that come up throughout the way. And again, it's not a social media thing with the facts, but just kind of doing a little research myself, and that's why I asked where.
My concern simply is you go into Jim's office and Jen made an overlay map and you can see the zones.
Yeah.
And most of the site, unfortunately, is within the zone.
I mean, in general, I don't mean this just towards the library. I mean this towards all projects going up at Shaw's and the millions of dollars that was spent on Shaw's Farm for the reasonings that have heard many different reasons between stop the building to we're going to put athletic fields up there without any research being done. It sounds like it's just, like you said, a little more research. Again, it's hindsight now, but more and more is coming up. And it's just questions that I hear throughout town is what possibly could happen at Shaw's Farm? What are the potentials over time? And realistically, it doesn't really matter sometimes when we look at it. It's starting to sound like whether we build a library or we don't, we might not even get tracks up there. We might not get anything up
That's
there.
possible.
We might have 140 plus acres of hiking trails and
cross-country trails.
And cross-country trails. Not because we want it that way, because we can't do anything.
Yeah, and that's, I'm obviously, town meeting approved a capital plan that had the feasibility study for track and field. We're about to go out to bid for that feasibility study, and that will show the results of that. I'm hopeful, but, at the same point, I can't change federal law or state law. It is what it is. We have to deal with it. It's just a matter of cost. I think we'll be able to locate whatever we choose as a town to locate there. It's just a matter of cost.
Okay.
And time.
And I'm not trying to go off on a tangent about this at roundtable. It's just there was something brought up that really, once I started hearing more about Shaw's, it's kind of got to the point where it's like, let's realistically look at this. And I mean, who knows what could happen up there?
Well, again, to Jim's point, contingent with the purchase was also the establishment of the capital stabilization fund. And yeah, buying that parcel was a significant cost, and yeah, you may say it's just nature trails and all the rest, but to a degree, it goes to the overall mission statement of the town, preserving open space, but at the same time, how much money have we saved as a community because of that capital stabilization fund? You know, being able to purchase products and capital items consistently. So,
No, I in no means did I say that anything about open and stabilization fund or open land policies. What I'm saying is that the land was purchased. What was the purchase of the purchase? What was the purpose, the main purpose of that purchase? And is that being fulfilled in general?
Yeah, the purpose prior to doing any due diligence was for municipal properties.
Exactly.
Town hall.
That's all I'm stating.
Station.
That was the purpose when it was voted in town meeting, why we were going to acquire that land, why we were going to buy it. All this other stuff could have came anyways, could have came from other things, could have happened otherwise. Yep. What I'm saying, though, is that we purchased that land as a town for the reasons of municipality up there and building up there, right?
That was the purpose.
That's all. And that's the part that I look at now and say, hey, that's great, things good come from it. But again, could it have come a lot less money? Could we have spent a lot less money to learn those lessons and to develop and design and to have these funds come about?
and to your point, that's the reason why every decision we make, we have to engage in due diligence, because that was a decision by a previous town administrator, that was a decision by a previous Board of Selectmen.
right.
So we have to make sure we vet everything, so that way 10 years down the road, we don't have people saying, what the heck happened? What was
No,
the thing?"
that's exactly why I'm bringing it up.
Right.
Because now it's a new board and it's a new town administrator, and to sit there and to say, hey, we're not going to learn from a mistake or not a mistake. I'm not saying it was a mistake. I'm not trying to throw anybody under the bus, the last town administrator, any board members. What I'm saying is that I wasn't here then. It just sounds like there's been a lot lost in translation of what we're to do with that land and what we're doing with the land. And hey, it's great. Let's keep it open. Let's not keep it open. But there were a lot of people that voted for what they thought was going to happen to the land. So now again, we look back at that and say, you know, is that happening or not? Or can we ever even do that? And that was just my question, I guess. So thank you.
All right, thanks, Mike.
Thank you.
Anything else?
I did with the sewer. Do you mind if I go back to that also for the?
Well, that wasn't an item that we discussed. That was just a point that I mentioned.
No, the sewer. We talked about sewer. Sewer was $175,394.
Oh, the certified enterprise
yeah,
money.
my
Yep,
update,
yep.
Yeah, we did talk about that, right?
Yeah, the enterprise fund.
Is that including the connection of Walmart and the costs?
No,
Okay.
that'll come in probably next year.
Excellent.
Ultimately, because of the projects in Northbridge, they will get the connection fee. What we will get is the flow.
Oh, okay.
We will get user fees, essentially, not the connection fee. Northbridge got the connection fee because
We'll
it's
get
within the
residuals
town
from
of
it
Northbridge.
year after year.
But what we get is the constant fees that they're paying to discharge sewer into our system,
Excellent.
which is significant revenue.
Now, will National Grid, they don't really have anything up there. I was going to see if they could tie in also. And
Well, they made tie-in because there were stubs put out there for National Grid as well as all the residents along that road. So
Yeah.
that will be additional revenue as well.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Thanks, Jim.
got
Thanks, you, Mr. Chairman.
Yep. All right, I have, I want to start with the Dudley Gendron event. Mike, you asked, you weren't sure how they did. They actually purchased 160 chickens and they sold out. So they did fantastic. And the other thing that we both contributed significantly to and got very wet and cold in the process was that they were able to raise $400, and that $400 will be used to buy grave markers for the deceased firefighters in town. So their goal is to go out and be able to replace some of the ones that have either disappeared or look kind of worn. Next, I'd like to thank Father Michael DiGeronimo for inviting me to speak before a Life Teen event. He asked me to come and speak to the children, the teenagers, about what it's like to be a Christian and serve our community. So I thank him, and hopefully the kids learned something and had fun with that. Lastly, I'd like to, before I do Food Bank, I'd like to remind the community that we have Waters Farm Days coming up on October 16 and 17. I mention this because on Facebook they are posting requests for help. So if anyone has any time on Saturdays, whether you're skilled at doing something or not, any help that you can give would definitely be appreciated. And speaking of give, I have to extend an invitation to both of you that was extended to me. The board of Waters Farm would like us as selectmen, if we could, to give an hour or two of our time during Waters Farm Days to greet the people as they come in, to help them park the cars and so forth. Obviously, I'm going to mention it to Ray and John when they return.
You're not working in the lion's tent, you know?
Well, that's the thing. I mean, I'm looking at us three right here. We're going to be there anyways, chances are, so
Exactly.
let's go out and help the cars park.
Get away from the fries for a little bit.
Exactly, because they're definitely tempting. All right, last up, we have the food pantry update, the want list. Now, apparently, our last meeting got cut off, so the public isn't going to realize this is basically just a repeat request from Michelle. So let's go through it quickly. They're looking for pie crusts, canned pineapple, mayonnaise, Spam, and yes, canned ham as well, beets, spinach, hamburger helper, tuna helper, rice pilaf, hand soap, and as always, little extra toothbrushes would be good. All right, I think we made it through another wonderful evening. I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion.
Second.
Hearing a motion, seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, passes 3-0.